right, well, next we have an important session on peer groups in the poultry family, as we have an opportunity to discuss the top 10 ways to support each other in good times and in bad. And we'd like to say a special thanks to FCC for supporting this topic and session today. Thanks to our FCC folks and for coming out with and joining us here today. So to get us started on the topic, I'd like to introduce Art Van Zanten. Art is the owner of the Integrated Feed Solutions here in Red Deer. That's an enterprise he launched just last month after nearly a decade as a feed sales rep and a long successful career in poultry. Always learning, always trying something new, and so Art has launched this new business. But he's going to talk about the value of peer support and setting up a peer group. So he'll share that with us, and then we'll bring up a couple of producers who have experience in peer groups and talk with them a little bit about it and what it means to them and that kind of thing. So Art, let's hear from you first, and we'll go from there. Welcome, Art Van Zanten.
All right. Can everybody hear me? This is the last topic of the day. I'd like to call it the most important topic of the day. But some of you may have a different opinion on that, which is okay. I'm good with that. Before we get going, though, there's two visionaries that are just walking towards the back of this room. And the reason why we are here today is because they had a vision for this event, which they implemented into an actionable item, as David Speller said is our biggest challenge. And so I would like to recognize Brenda and Val for their vision, but also for acting on it. Thank you very much. Now I have a question for you. Who would like to live a long, enjoyable, happy life? Raise your hands, please. Some of you not. Okay, that's interesting. Does that mean that today we didn't provide you with an hopeful perspective for the future? Is that what that means? Anyway, so the next question is, for those of you who did raise your hand, who want to live long, happy lives, how much time did you invest in the last year on studying how to live a long, happy, healthy life? Who invested more than 60 hours in the last year on studying how to live longer? 30 hours. Oh, there's one. 30 hours? 20? 10? Okay, so I think I'm already finished my talk. I've made my point, and let's all go home early. No, I'm kidding. Let's see if this works. So I have titled the topic to stay in tune with the 10-year anniversary, 10 ways to support your neighbor. But they are all embedded in the presentation, so you actually have to pay attention, and we'll follow up after. Now, this will be the shortest presentation of the day, so don't worry, it's not going to take very long. So, introduction, what is the challenge? And this brings us back to the Western Poultry Conference of 2019. Sean Stanford from McGrath presented to us the mental health topic that year as a farmer. And there's two things that he said. And one I captured in my notes, that's the picture you see on the screen. And the other one has always stuck with me. The one that has stuck with me is, it can get pretty lonely out here sitting on your equipment all day in the field. The second one, which I did capture, is look at social behavior. We might not think we have changed, small changes, yet big impact. And folks, this was 2019. So we already had a problem then. And today, I think we can come to our own conclusions whether that's gotten worse or not. So let's back it up how to live a little longer with some research. There's a fellow named David Butner, and he conducted a research program where they interviewed areas of the world where people lived over 100 years on a per population basis. So the highest concentration of people over 100 in those areas of the world were surveyed on how to live, how do they live. No, we're going too fast. And this is the outcome. And so in this pictogram here, we'll start at the top right-hand corner. The first thing that we need is a purpose. We need a reason to get out of bed every morning. Then as we move down, we need to eat wisely. And then we move further down and up again, we need to be connected. And this is where we're focusing on here for this last hour, is we need to be connected to one another. This is healthy for us. The fourth point, of course, I don't want to miss, which I'm not too concerned about you farmers in the room. I'm sure you've got this one down pat, but for us service people, we also have to move. So let this be a reminder to put it in your calendar to get your exercise scheduled properly. A little bit of experience in the groups that I've started as a little bit of a background. In 2002, I was asked by a couple of hog producers, can we get together and just to discuss some topics with regards to, learning something more about, what's going on in the barn. And that group is still going today. It's still meeting, not as regular as it did then. In those days, we met monthly in the wintertime, and we also included food, because food and learning actually and connection all go together, just like it does today. It wouldn't have been near as good of an experience if we wouldn't have had an amazing lunch this afternoon, right? So we first would eat, we would socialize a bit with one another, and then we would get into the learning topic of that day. What were the goals? Well, 3 goals. One was to learn. The second one is it had to be neutral. In other words, if I'm employed by a certain employer, then that should not deter anybody else that is maybe working with the competition from not being able to participate. Because the only way that we can learn more and deeper is when there is diversity. So we need to have diversity in groups to make it work. The third part is we have to develop trust with one another. If we really want to get into deeper learning from one another, there has to be trust. One example is, for example, succession planning. If we're going to talk about succession planning with a group, that's a vulnerable subject. And so therefore, we need to really trust one another that we can do this safely. So the topics that we covered were obviously nutrition, animal health, financial, and other topics. And I have a confession to make at this point in time. As you can see in this picture, I did use AI, as in artificial intelligence AI, for the slide presentation. Not for the content, but for the design part. And when I list other topics, one of the things that actually works amazing is if you just throw some topic out there every so once in a while, that's just way out there, just like you see on this picture. Like, why wouldn't you feed a pickle to an elephant? I don't know. But guess what? That's where innovation happens, when we go way out there in the in the in the galaxy, I guess, and that's where innovation comes from. So it's not just always good to focus on, let's say, lighting, ventilation, or why are my birds, condemned. We also need to look at some topic way out there so we can continue to innovate with one another. The second project that I started was in 2020, and it's called the Common Ground Project. And it was it was a peer group learning thing, but in a really totally different context. So this is supporting red durians, and this was the blueprint of last year's growing season. And what do? Well, we want to grow community, we want to grow people in the community, and we want to continue to connect people with one another. This was the picture of one of the summer camps that we held there. So there's 3 programs that we ran last year. We ran an education program for the schools. We ran summer camps for the kids while they were out of school. And over and above, all the food that is grown there is donated to not-for-profit. This was the harvest supper. It's amazing to see. This was 2023, so this was our 3rd growing season, because I started in 2020, and it literally took me 70 weeks to get the approval from the city of Red Deer on how, or on finally being able to grow an onion. I always say, it just makes you cry when you think about it. Oh, and now I'm going too fast again with our clicker. So last fall, I was asked again by 2 poultry producers to start another group. So we have done that. And our initial vision is to solve the condemned challenge, which I know that will take our lifetime. Helping out, in this particular case, a fellow producer. And then the third reason is to learn a few things from one another. And this is where we're now going to go and move into the panel section so that you guys can have all your questions answered on how to set up peer groups or how peer groups function. We'll bring in the other guests here today, the guest producers that are here. But first, the question. What are the 10 things that were embedded in this presentation that can help you grow community? I want to hear it from you. I want you to shout it out. There's somebody at the back. Pardon? Food. That's a perfect one. Any day. What else? No cell phones. That's right. It has to be physical. I kind of glanced over that, but this is really important. There's a reason why we're here. Social media cannot replace physical connection. Okay? And I think we're starting to find this out as older ones. In the back. Treat your neighbor like yourself. Correct. Be neutral. Yes. Another way is we have to be accepting of one another, right? I was waiting for that one. I mean, you deserve a prize. You deserve a mug if there's one left. Now, I got to be honest with you. I have studied this book myself, and when I found this slide to summarize it, is like, I didn't read anything about the wine at 5 thing. And I know somebody's going to say, what about it? How is that going to help us? So good on you. Anything else? Oh, wine at 5, sorry. It was in the pictogram. I don't know if I can get back there. Maybe my cell service is slow today. No, I went too far. No, it's not coming up. Anyway, let's get into our panel. Thank you very much, everybody. Looking forward to lots of questions.
All right. Well, that sets an intriguing stage for our next presentation. And so I'd like to call up our panel guest to join Art. And on our panel, we also have Henk Schuur of Alberta Chicken Producers and Adrian Tobler of Alberta Chicken Producers as well. Just a farmer? Okay, well, you're never supposed to say just a farmer. Didn't we learn that? Okay, now, Henk, you can have a seat. Henk was born on a mixed farm in Holland with dairy farming and some hogs. Now his dad was still farming with horse and tractor, but unfortunately, when he was 17, his dad couldn't do it anymore. So and they actually ended up with a heart attack. So Henk started farming together with his brother and then ended up taking over half the farm. After a few years, the cows were sold and the focus became more on crop farming and custom work. In 91, the family built a brand new broiler operation. And then in 1996, Henk immigrated to Canada and started all over, building everything on his farm west of Ponoka from scratch. He and his wife, Niski, have been married for 44 years, and they have 3 daughters. 2 of them have broiler farms, and the youngest one is married to a hog farmer and custom worker. So in 2020, Henk and his wife moved off the farm to make room for the next generation. And he also served 1 term of 3 years at Alberta Chicken Producers. Next to Henk is Adrian Tobler. Adrian is a 2nd generation grain and broiler producer from Rossland who can trace his family's farming roots to the 1500s. Adrian has always had a passion for agriculture and strives to grow quality birds and crops to the best of his ability. He sees the value in growth and is always striving to improve his practices. Coming together with fellow farmers to discuss common concerns, struggles, and successes is important to him as it allows producers and the industry to grow as a whole. And he's looking forward to participating in this panel as well. So we've got the 3 of them. We have Slido in action. We look forward to a lively discussion. Maybe first of all, Henk, since Art sort of set the stage for us, tell us a little more about your peer group and Art mentioned why it was started, but just give us a bit of an overview of kind of how many people are involved and how often you meet, those kinds of things.
We started our group in 97 already, so we beat Art's hog group. So we started with 5 members, I guess. And it grew out to about 15, 16, and now we are down to 12 because some farmers stop and farmers get bigger. But we do it every 8 weeks, come together, we have lunch together and share our results. No secrets, open books, confidentiality. So that's basically our success. Always have a good lunch.
Good lunch is always a good reason for it.
Yep.
All right, Adrian, maybe just give us a bit of that overview on your group.
So, hello. Yeah, we're here. Our peer group is small, informal. We started ours, can't remember when it was. We started ours after COVID because that's when our processors stopped doing their peer group. And we found value in that. So 4 or 5 of us got together and it's very informal, just discuss, same thing. We usually have some lunch, discuss our numbers, very open book, honest. And yeah, we've helped each other quite a bit with some struggles and successes. And we've kind of fallen apart, but we're looking to get it back together and grow it.
Art, with your groups that you've been going, some of them have a long track record. What is the key to longevity? Because things change. And if you go for 10 years, lots moves around and changes. What's the secret to longevity and to keeping a peer group going? Or do they naturally have a lifespan?
No, I don't think it's natural lifespan is that long. It does take energy, and I think that's the most important thing to keep something going is to put the energy in, and then you're going to get the result out. The hog study group, I started it and I was only involved, I think, for the first 5 years, and at that time I felt that I should turn it over because that would bring in new, fresh ideas rather than, having one person do it all the time, because then it can also become a little bit of a convenience thing where, hey, this guy's planning everything out. All we need to do is show up. So that was the initial thought pattern. And I'm actually doing the same thing right now with the Common Ground project. We gained a pile of volunteers and really even energetic young people. And so again, I want to turn it over to them to take this thing to the next level. We don't know where we're going to go with the Anoka study group. That one was just started, but I think there's something about making sure that it stays fresh. And as Henk mentioned, there is going to be some natural turnover. If you're going for 20 years, especially in the hog industry, there's a lot of producers that were in the group originally that are no longer there. Luckily, there's some young farmers that have started and are still there. So that's why it's still going, but there is going to be a natural turnover if you're going that long.
Okay, the questions are coming in fast and furious, so we'll get to them. But Henk, I'm going to come back to you. Is it important to have a mixture, as Art mentioned, diversity? Is it important to have sort of a wide range of age groups and types of farm, or is it better, like, do you have all the same type of poultry producers in your group, or do you have a wide age range? Tell us about that.
Yeah, excuse me. Most of us have a mixed farm, broilers and crop farming. So, but it's the youngest one is maybe late 20s. I'm the oldest one. I started the group with a few other guys. But no, it's not, age is not important, and background or size or whatever, doesn't matter.
Okay. Adrian, in your group, do you have diversity in terms of, what it looks like on the farming?
It's just broiler producers. Age group is kind of middle of the road, I guess. And it's diverse in the way it's not just farm owners. There's also a hired hand or a couple hired hands that sit in on it. Yeah.
Okay, some of the questions coming in. Do you have guests for the meetings? For example, someone who can teach on a specific topic. Henk, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, sometimes we invite speakers or advisors or whatever you want to call them, banks, succession planning, like Art said, it's quite an issue, and we have to be open and honest. But the variety, equipment, it doesn't matter, whatever we can learn from.
Adrian?
Haven't yet, but that's something I will take back, and it's a good idea.
Art, in your groups?
Yes, we've actually had a guest speaker, I think, every single time we've met. And it's the same, like we meet once every cycle, every 8 weeks.
All right, who organizes the group and where do you meet? That's another question from the floor. Who wants to jump in? Henk, you're smiling. Who organizes? Are you the organizer, Henk?
Yeah, we come together every A period, usually as close as possible to the end, after the end of an A period. We are flexible because we're all crop farmers as well. We have a WhatsApp group. So like the last time the weather changed, we had a couple of days of rain and we came together on short notice. So, and that's also to keep everybody together. I do all the administrative work, make the spreadsheets. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of commitment from the other producers as well to hand it in. but it usually works.
And where do you meet?
We
Does it-
started at each other's kitchen, but now usually in a restaurant. Sometimes we just at whatever, or in a hotel, we meet a room, rent a room. And then the one here in Lacombe has a Chinese attached to it, so we have dinner there together. So
Adrian, what about who does the work and where do you meet?
We kind of all just try to coordinate when it works. We'd meet at one of our places, shop, garage, whatever, have some snacks, chit chat, go from there.
And yeah, Art?
We've been meeting at a different producer every time, so we kind of rotate. And there's some guests over here that want to ask Henk if you're actually at meeting at 5 o'clock and start with a glass of wine.
All right, did it start with a glass of wine?
no, we usually end with a glass of wine or a glass of beer.
So business first, then wine. Okay, gotcha. Now, how do you keep the discussion positive and not focused only on challenges? That's a question that came from the floor. Let's see who's nodding. Adrian's nodding. Is that a challenge to keep it positive?
Not real. Well, kind of. Results are usually always positive for one person at least. So that kind of comes around and we kind of share that amongst the group, I guess. Not everybody's always positive, but you got to make an effort and to find the good things in what's going on in the industry, not just the poor ones. I know the challenging ones always get the most attention, but with a challenge, somebody else has successes in that same field, right? So you can learn from them, bring that home, and you can also give some advice to somebody else that's having challenges, right? So the positive kind of comes with the challenges.
Hank, what did you do to keep everybody realistic and honest, but positive too?
Yeah, we always try to have first place have fun together, enjoy it. You know, there's always a goof in the group. So
Are you the goof in your group?
no, I'm not. No, but it usually works, and you know, the sharing each other's troubles can be positive as well. You know, usually have a positive outcome, and you're not alone with the problems. Other farmers have it as well. I don't like to blame other people or hatcheries or breeder groups. First, look at yourself, and then try to solve the problem.
Art, you had a few rules or guidelines up there. How do you suggest to groups that they not, focus on the negative and just be a belly aching session? How do you get them to be positive or, make sure that there's that kind of tone to the discussions?
Well, that's actually a very interesting question that I hadn't thought about. So we've had two quite in-depth sessions on how to solve the condemned challenge. And let's face it, that's not quite a positive topic to discuss. And yet, there was no negativity. And I guess the only way that I can summarize that as to why the discussion didn't go negative is because we always eat first.
So you don't get
And
hangry.
no, we don't drink wine first, just in case you're gonna ask. And maybe that's what it is, just a setting when we get together, eat, socialize, and then, your mindset is different. Then when you come with your loaded book of questions type of thing and start, firing bullets at, for example, we had a veterinarian last time, right from the time he walks through the door. So I think it's how you structure the meeting.
And then what about leadership wise? Do you usually have one person that sort of moderates or leads the discussion, or, how do you keep it as a group discussion, not just break off into two people talking here and two people talking there. Do you have someone who's sort of, Hank, in your group, do you have someone who sort of leads it, or do you take turns kind of leading the discussion?
We have a kind of a chairman, but we're basically all equal in the group. Our voices are all the same. If somebody has a problem, he has a problem. But sometimes you need a chairman to guide it a little bit, but yeah, that's about it.
Adrian, in your group, did you, work with that and sort of have one person in charge of steering things a little?
No, ours is a little cowboy. It'll get off into a rant, and for half an hour, you get three groups of two talking, and well, wait, I want to hear what they're talking about. Let's all talk about this together. And then 20 minutes later, it's all off on a rant again. But it's just, yeah, it's informal, but still lots of good discussion out of it. And ours is fairly small yet. So,
Okay. And Art, is that under best practices, something you recommend that you do share the leadership, or that you do make sure that someone's in charge of, starting the dinner or whatever the most important priority is?
Yeah, so far, the lead role has been assigned to me by the group, and that's okay. Eventually, that will transfer over as people get more comfortable with one another. But yeah, as far as, keeping people in line, I think, especially if we look at this last half hour, what we've been talking about is it doesn't need to be that structured. Like, it should be loose. It reminds me of actually what's happening in the classroom today, although, one could debate that that's gone too far. But, when we grew up and we were in a class, everything was structured and you had to be quiet, or else you got the strap, or, whatever else they had in those days. And today, if you go into a classroom, it's almost, like I said, it's gone too far, but it has to be a bit more relaxed, because if it's too structured, you're not going to learn either. There has to be some looseness to it if you want to learn from one another. You gotta be relaxed to a certain extent, right? You can't be tense and learning at the same time.
Okay, yeah, and this is one of the important questions that's come in. How has the group helped you? Hank, I'm going to come back in your operation, in your family, in your farm. How has the group benefited you?
In '97, when we started that group, it didn't take long, maybe a couple meetings, or that we saw benefits in feed pricing, because no coffee shop stories, the real story, the real numbers. And we saw that a lot of feed companies wanted their name on that list. They were competing. So, and on the other side, there are sometimes some challenges, and you learn from each other, diseases, or like Art said, condemnation or whatever. And different practices can have some impact.
Adrian, what about some of the benefits you've seen from being involved and, like you said, wanting to start it up again?
just talking to producers and realizing we're all facing the same challenges, whether it's today or next flock or the next one after, we're all going to see the same thing eventually. And keeps processors honest, I guess, with us.
Okay. Art, you're passionate about peer support groups. Why? What benefits do you see? Have you observed in your experience with them?
Well, it comes back to this connection piece. We have to connect with one another, and we've been losing this over the last number of years. As Sean mentioned in 2019, it might have been subtle. And you can actually see examples of this because, and I wasn't here last night, and so it could have been different, but the Pork Congress is going on. It was their 50th anniversary. But they have seen a shift as well. They used to have a banquet, or they did even last night in this room. And then they always used to bring in an entertainer. But because of the changes on biosecurity and so on and so forth, and the scaling of farms, where you might not have that, tight-knit community anymore, that you can, lean on a couple times a year for a potluck supper or a pancake breakfast or those kind of things, it's actually, farming has become lonely. Over and above, there's greater pressure today being a farmer than there was 20 years ago. From a financial perspective, but from all kinds of other perspectives, because food producing people are not being looked at, in a favorable manner anymore, which is all not right. And so that's why we need to connect with one another, because, and that's why we should do it with food all the time. We need to become passionate about food. In other countries, other populations, and I'm learning that now through the garden project, food is way more sacred than it is here. But guess what? If food was sacred here, they would have way more respect for the farmers, because that goes hand in hand. And so I think the connection, that's for me, that's the big thing. And then, when I learned that it was actually healthy, part of your, long life is like, well, this is perfect. So it's a win-win all around.
So did Pork Congress abandon entertainment and just have a networking visiting session?
Yeah, right. So that's where I was going with that. Thanks for keeping me on track here. In a given year, there was a change, and they just couldn't keep the crowd quiet. And it was just because people were so happy to see other people that they basically hadn't seen in a year or two. And so that shows that we need that social connection with one another. And yeah, they disbanded the whole entertainment, and people are having a blast just visiting with each other.
So just following up then on what Art has said, Adrian, I'm going to come back to you. During hard times, this is a question from the audience, such as the AI outbreaks, do you think groups like this can help with mental health in terms of being able to talk about what you're going through and in a confidential, safe setting?
Yeah, most definitely. I think talking about it's the most important thing. No matter what challenges you're going through, we all went through 2020 apart. And like Art had said, we just all miss talking to each other, like just visiting, right? So whether it's in a group setting or anything, just talking about the problem, figure out what other guys are going through, the stresses about it, and worst case, go talk to a professional. Like you use a professional for your banking, for your accounting, go talk to a professional about your brain too. It's not a bad idea.
Hank, what about, have you noticed that as a benefit that you guys get closer together because you're able to, share what kinds of real stresses that puts on you when you go through some of these tough things like AI?
Oh yeah, we had it, and AI hit a couple of years ago, then people, in the group, there's always one or two or a few that are trusted, have the right integrity, and that people call. You call, and even just a short phone call to people that's affected, is AI or whatever, can make a big difference.
All right, here's an interesting one that's come in. Are your groups open to other members? You get a group you're safe and feeling confidential with, and somebody else wants to join. How do you work them in? Do you work them in? What do you find about open to other members? Henk, you're waving your mic, or you're saying don't talk to me.
It doesn't matter. Yes, we are open for new members. Together you're strong. The bigger you are, the stronger you get. Exchange more experiences. So it's beneficial to be bigger, I guess.
Adrian?
Yeah,
You're in a small group. Is that better? Is that an advantage?
No, not necessarily. Just ours is just, we knew each other beforehand. So we said, let's get together and chit chat. But anybody who's willing to drive to Camrose to meet with us or wherever we end up meeting is more than welcome to join. Come talk to me later and I'll grab your info.
Art, is there an ideal size for peer groups?
I was hoping I wasn't going to get that question. Um, from a learning perspective, one could have a discussion on it. But I guess if we look at it in the same way we look at scaling a farm, just building another barn, I guess if the group got to such a size that, there was a lot of secondhand discussion going on, you might still meet, but you might actually do like what we do in bigger events like this is do a breakout session where you actually do discuss a topic, on a smaller table with one another and then come back in a big group. So I think it's a matter of structure. But I do believe that, the learning is not going to be the same when we sit around like this versus if we sit, with 5 at a table. There's a difference there.
Does your group have ground rules other than confidentiality? What's your take on having some kind of basic ground rules? Hank, we'll start with you.
Yeah, excuse me. One of the rules is if you don't hand in your numbers, your results, you're not for that meeting. You're not part of the group. Then you don't get nothing in, nothing out.
Interesting rule. Okay, Adrian.
We just ask everybody to respect others, confidentiality.
Art, any other rules that you've kind of come across or found that maybe it would be helpful in terms of if people were thinking of setting up one?
No, basically the 3 that I mentioned, I think are critical. Make sure that your goals are right, that you're there to learn.
So setting goals then would be important.
Well, the goal would be that somebody's going to, same as this event, somebody's, when we leave this room, I sure hope that you've learned a thing or two. And it's the same when we get together for an hour over lunch. Second is neutral, so that it's open to everybody. And then the third part is that, because the one thing about it is if you have a constant changing group, there is a little bit of a danger that you might not develop the trust to get into the deeper subjects. Like if the people change all the time, there has to be somewhat of a consistency, because I don't know how you would, go into, let's say we decided to add another half hour to today's program and let's talk about succession planning. Well, if I don't know you to some extent, am I comfortable in, discussing everything about, all the bad things my kids are doing? And trust me, some are better than others. I will let you know that. With 4 girls, yeah, you're going to see the whole spectrum. So,
However, though, I mean, I guess in some cases, for a topic like farm succession planning, if you don't know them, that's almost easier than knowing it too well. If you're too close to your neighbors, sometimes you don't want to talk about succession planning. But all right, another one. You can tell this is a farm practical audience. We've got the question: who pays for the restaurant party? Hank, who pays if you guys go out to a restaurant? Is it just everyone pays their own?
No, we just have one guy that goes over the money. And we all pay $150 at a time. And when the wallet is empty, we pay $150 again. If somebody doesn't show up, it's too bad. He pays.
That's a rule. There you go. Adrian, what about in your world?
At the time, we just try to split it up fairly.
Okay. And Art, what have you found in your experiences?
well, I'm looking at Nancy because she's going to be the guest speaker next week. And so that's the bad news, Nancy, is whoever is the guest speaker pays for the lunch. No, I'm kidding.
Okay. Now that's true hospitality, I guess. Okay.
So far, it has been the feed reps that have been covering the group, and I'm happy to say that in the group, there's 5 different feed companies being represented.
All right. And again, that's where you come in with that confidentiality. Even though they're competitors, they can sit down at the table and talk about bigger picture issues with you. Okay. What about challenges? What are some of the pitfalls or the challenges to steer around or be aware of if you're setting up a peer group? Adrian?
Yeah, life's busy. And like farms are always growing and changing and family dynamics and disasters. You know, if you guys get a barn fire or something, you just can't always meet, right? So we haven't met in a while, and it's hard to structure that. We've always said, okay, every cycle we'll meet, and it just so hard to organize everybody, even though it's only 5 or 6 people. That's our biggest challenge.
Yeah, working around busy schedules. Hank?
Yeah, we basically have the same, but like I said, we have a WhatsApp group. So then we have everybody hands in his or her results to me. I work it out. And if the weather changes or whatever, then on short notice, we can have a meeting.
Yep, that's a handy one. Okay. Art, how have you seen communication in some of your other groups, or what other challenges have you run across?
Well, as far as the livestock study groups, that's a picnic to keep it organized. Try and organize 100 volunteers on a garden project in the city. That's a whole different ballgame. Somebody always challenged me here in the city and said, you should go and work with a volunteer organization because you'll learn a lot about leadership. And I thought, well, how can that be any different than, working with anybody for that matter in a paid profession? Well, I'm telling you, with a not-for-profit, it gets pretty challenging. I think to give more direction to the group of producers here today, that's where a bit of structure comes in. And it's good to meet by cycle because it's every 8 weeks. But if you're a layer producer, that wouldn't work so much because your cycle is much longer. So what I did with the hog group was once a month, the same day of the month, like the 4th Friday or, whatever you choose, but always that 4th Friday from October to April. And that's the easiest way because then people start putting it on their calendars ahead of time. Because if you don't, because life is busy, it's challenging to get the group size together.
So making it a priority and part of the regular schedule, the habit. How many times does it take to form a habit? 20 or something like that? 6 times? Okay, that's all you need is 6 meetings and then you've got a habit. For Hank, does the WhatsApp group stay active between meetings? Do you use that as a communication tool, or is it only used to talk about the meetings?
No, it's on a regular basis. Whatever topic or issue that's going on, we somebody throws up a ball and then somebody reacts or they all react, or it all depends on what's going on at that moment.
Yeah, and Art, is that something that becomes a bit of a peer support group in itself, in that it is, although it is online and not as good as person-to-person contact, that it can be a tool in helping with peer support?
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to mention. These tools, such as Zoom, are great that they're out there, because if we're ever getting into another AI situation, and hopefully we will never see it again, but I think that's wishful thinking, at least that's the resource to fall back on to stay connected with one another. So it has a place, but it still doesn't replace the physical.
So it can be kind of a blend then.
Well, I want to stay with physical. I think it's a mistake to, even if the weather is bad or whatever, cancel the meeting, move it a week, but keep it physical.
Adrian, anything to add to that?
Yeah, we have a WhatsApp group. It's been silent for a little while unless I got kicked out. Or we just haven't had any problems, I guess. Usually it was kind of a rant and rave. Hey, you guys seeing this? You seeing that? Who can we point a finger at?
Okay, what about advice then? You're talking to fellow producers. Obviously, there's some interest in this. Is there any advice that you would give to someone about you know, maybe they're interested in setting up a peer support group. How do you find people? You know, how do you get started? Any advice that you can pass along? Who's okay, Hank? You're closest. I'm going to pick on you first. Any advice that you could give to anybody? How did yours get started? I mean, I guess Art was the spark, but
I have a background in Holland, and it was very common to have a study group out there. So, and that's a few more Dutch fellows came here after us. So, and that's basically how it started.
yeah, the idea of a study group, yeah, that's more of a accepted sort of practice in other places, isn't it? Okay. Adrian, what about you? Any other advice?
No, I'll be talking to Art and Hank for advice to keep ours fresh and going.
But has it given you sort of a renewed interest in, you know, yeah, maybe that's something that we need to get going again? Adrian?
Yeah, it's definitely needed. Like I said, we're all facing the same challenges, and face to face is the best way to figure things out. Talk with fellow producers and try to hash them out together. Really is it's just, I think it's a good thing.
And Art, you know, this is what this session is all about, is kind of providing some advice, but any other practical tips for people who might want to start a peer support group in their area? Or do they need to be regional?
Well, probably for logistical reasons. It'll be a lot harder in our Alberta winters to get together if, you know, we have a split group between Calgary and Edmonton. And if the rivalry in hockey was a little better than it has been the last couple of years, it might be actually a great thing to have some social fun together. But I can tell you what probably not to do when you first get started, and don't start with wine at 5 o'clock.
Okay.